keep us all dumbed down and hope that they will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package lie to keep us trapped in greed. Another green bells wrapped around our minds, an endless red tape to keep the truth confined. They will not force us. They will stop degrading us. They will not control us. We will be victorious.
Hello, everybody. Let me just bring up my rock fin because it's a little delayed, as always. So I am anticipating some new viewers tonight. So I just want to kind of give just a few heads up about things. I've been doing my show over 6 years, so I'm kind of particular of what I like. And something I don't like is when people come in the comments and say insults or any kind of pejoratives whatsoever. I believe in giving my guests a safe space. So I understand it's election season and I understand not everyone likes Marianne. Criticism, go for it. Dialogue, go for it. I don't do insults or, any kind of name calling. So that's a heads up. That there will be moderators in here for tonight's show. I also want to give a heads up that I am 85% blind. So I will not be controlling the comments or anything myself. And this was pre-recorded yesterday. So while, we'll be interacting in the comments, I won't be able to take questions from the comments as it was from yesterday. Yeah, so I'm excited for you guys to see this. For those of you who haven't been to my show before or don't know me from social media, I've been covering East Palestine essentially since day one. And I've gone there twice. I've traveled from Harrisburg, PA, and brought tons of mutual aid both times and organized a protest and rally and all of those things, and have interviewed probably dozens of residents. It's something I'm very passionate about. As a disabled person, I'm very passionate about Medicare for all, which, Marianne is certainly the only Democrat who supports it. And also environment, something I'm very passionate about. But also I've become very, very close friends with the people in East Palestine, and they have become my family. We talk every day through text, phone calls. And, I know firsthand what they're going through. They communicate with me, and I hear from strangers every day as well who have been affected, who share their stories. So it's something that I will not shut up about. It's something that more people need to talk about, and it's something that is blatantly ignored by media, including independent media. And it's incredibly important because you'll learn some of the things. Our conversation was only an hour. There's only so much you can talk about because I have Marianne, but also 3 residents on. So we'll get into everything. You will be able to hear like a general idea of these guests and who are my dear friends. And also, I'll be talking a little bit afterwards to give you a heads up of a few things. And I do also have a pretty big announcement. So here we go. Here is Miss Marianne and 3 East Palestine residents. Today will be primarily about East Palestine and healthcare and environment. So now that we have got that situated, I do want to introduce our panel. Christina and Edward, you know from the show. Christina is a resident of Darlington, which is actually Pennsylvania. However, a lot of people don't realize it is on the border. So while she is only 5.8 miles away from East Palestine, it is Pennsylvania. So a lot of times people think Ohio, but there is no bubble. These toxins and water do go beyond. Krissy, she is relocated. She is in East Palestine. However, she's relocated at this moment. Her house is incredibly affected. Jami, mother also relocated from East Palestine. Also, her home is heavily affected. And of course, we have presidential candidate Marianne Williamson, who's a friend of the show and has been on quite a number of times. So thank you all so much for joining today. I'm really excited.
Thank you for having us,
Joy. Thank you, Joy.
Absolutely. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely. You all have an open invitation to the show. You all know that. So I think I'm just going to go around. Christina and my buddy Edward, why don't you share a few minutes of your experience since February 3rd?
So since February 3rd, for about 4.5, 5 months, I had been sick with migraines and breathing issues, coughing, all like a lot of upper respiratory things. And since then, I've gone to the creeks to explore what's still in the creeks. Edward had some symptoms off and on through this as well. He's right here. And we also live with my dad, who has also experienced some of the symptoms that came with this. I was the most affected in my house, but we are about 6 miles away and still had issues. Since then, we've not been able to get testing from the government or any, even Norfolk Southern. We've not been able to get any testing from them. We have had independent testing done and are waiting some results still. And we've been to almost all the EPA meetings, trying to just gather as much information about what is going on here. So we are.
Yeah, you're definitely, all three of you are fighters. All three of you are outspoken and in the streets. Jami, my soul sister. Do you want to give a heads up of I mean, you could write a book. Jami, you might have to unmute.
I can hear you now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
The thing was frozen. So I live approximately 1 mile from the derailment site. I have Sulphur Run Creek that runs right in front of my house, probably 5 to 7 steps from my front door. On February 15th, I threw a fit when they lifted the evacuation and said, let's do a little bit of air monitoring. I said, where's the water testing? We don't even know what all chemicals are in the creek. Where's the soil sampling? Nothing had been done. I was able to get Norfolk Southern's tester to come to my house in my basement from CTEH, and they found a potential pathway to exposure with some water coming down my wall that they believed was contaminated water. The next day, the railroad called and offered to move me out of my home. I didn't need a scientist to tell me something was wrong. When I pulled in my driveway after the train derailment, I started choking, lungs burning, eyes burning, nose burning. Looked over, saw chemicals freely flowing down the creek, and I knew something was up. So I am now permanently relocated. I am the one of the founders of the Unity Council for the East Palestine train derailment, and we're just a group of community members that want the truth. We still have not had our homes tested. We need, at least for peace of mind, even if you think there are not chemicals in our houses, we don't know because it hasn't been tested. Some of the things that Unity Council has been doing, we went to Columbus and disrupted the State House. We got Governor DeWine to declare a state of emergency in Ohio. We went to DC. We met with like 10 senators in one day. We were able to get them, most of them, to write letters of support to President Biden. President Biden just declared an executive order. Basically, he wants FEMA to come in and see if we have unmet needs. We had, smaller wins, like, not that they're smaller by any means, I guess not smaller, different wins. We got Rep. Rab from Pennsylvania. He is the representative for Philadelphia, to write up some legislation saying that public health emergencies should be announced. The information should be readily available to residents. We got the EPA to admit that the most recent fish kill at the beginning of August was due to them tearing up a bridge and the sediment being full of the chemicals and flushing down the creek. They had previously said that that creek was clean. We've gotten so many victories along the way, but we know that the fight is still a long fight.
Absolutely. And Krissy, my love, can you, I know it's going to be rough, but can you just, who aren't familiar with you?
Well, I'm still stuck in February 3rd. Unfortunately, not much has changed. Like Jami, I was relocated because the contaminated creek floods in my basement. The only difference is my mother owns her home. She's owned it since 1970. So they're not wanting to tie up that end right now, that loose end. Every day you live, you don't know where you're going to be. Finally, I did find out that they rented that home for me for 1 year. But my lease is up in March. And now they're talking to me about moving forward with cleaning my home. Those chemicals and things, the dioxin levels in my furnace filter reported at a reporting limit was at a 30, and some of them as high as 8,000. I cannot take my family back to that home. My parents are elderly. They can't take on a mortgage. We are at the mercy right now of the railroad to see if they'll extend the lease. So I will know how long my family will have a home. The fact of not knowing if you're going to be homeless, because it is not safe to take back. It's not safe to go back. I get sick when I go in there. I have extreme panic attacks when I get in there. My home's no longer my safe haven. And they're not wanting to buy a home for a special circumstance if they can't buy it for everyone or refuse to buy it for everyone. So the fact that my mom and my father worked so hard to have a home, it's now yanked away from them. Every day I wonder where we're going to end up, what they're going to do. And they want to cap off a open pipe that was in that tunnel the whole time we've had the house, because many years ago, the sewage went into Sulphur Run. So they want to cap off that, but they had a pocket of chemical for a month and a half directly under my home, underneath that pipe. And that's when I had Michael Regan in my home, and he is recorded acknowledging a chemical gas smell in my home. That wasn't by accident. We also had Sherrod Brown acknowledge it, Bill Johnson, but nobody's dealing with that, and nobody is answering those questions. Michael Regan one time spoke to me, and that was that day. He has never followed up. The EPA that I speak with daily has no answers, except they just want to clean the home and get us back in it. There's a point where meth houses are torn down. They're uninhabitable. There's a big difference between all those chemicals that was on that train and those that are made in a meth house. And when I asked that, I was told, well, they cook that in the house. Well, our town was cooked by those chemicals on that open burn. It's left footprints that will last a lifetime. We will never see that town uncontaminated. Someone needs to step up. Someone needs to do the right thing, whether they risk losing their job. God will provide for them. But we need true fighters and people that's going to risk their job, their safety, everything to stand up for us, because you're going to see a lot of people lose their lives. You're going to see little kids. We've seen them. Jami, Christina, we've all sat back. I seen them come into my store when I worked in Palestine with nosebleeds. This is not right. Somebody needs to be our voice. Somebody needs to speak for us and push this and not stop until they help East Palestine. I've lost my hearing on you guys, I believe, or it's
I
quiet.
think we may have lost Joy, guys. I don't see her here, but Krissy, you just spoke everything I feel when it comes to children. This is human lives. You know, everybody wants to make it into politics. Everybody wants to make it about things that it's not truly about. When it comes to it, not only is it about lives, but it's about the lives of our children. And that's who is gonna be most affected by this. And that is who is truly gonna pay for the devastation that Norfolk Southern, did to our community.
Refuses to acknowledge.
And I guess, Marianne, I had a question for you in regards to your presidency. I feel like by the time what is going on the ground with the people reaches DC, it's no longer what's actually going on the ground. It's politics. When I went to DC the first time, and even the second time, I had people say, we had no idea that you were sick. And when I got back to East Palestine, people said, well, how didn't they know? How didn't they know? And I said, well, we had our governor sipping water on TV. Our local government has not mentioned it. The EPA is saying everything is fine. So I guess maybe what kind of like checks and balances, or how would you make sure that what's going on with the people actually gets heard? You may be on mute, Marianne. We can't hear you. There you go.
Jami, what you and Krissy have already said on this call represent a perfect encapsulation of what's going on in America today. Voices expressing the depth of human suffering, particularly female voices. When that suffering, its very existence, is a challenge to prevailing officialdom, in this case, Norfolk Southern, the EPA, the way the whole political system operates in such a way as to basically protect and enable corporate forces such as Norfolk Southern. This is where America is today, including projecting onto the women, well, you know, she's a little overwrought. I've seen you describe some of the ways you've been treated when you've tried to talk to some of these people. The very fact that you are laying it down the way it is, we need a president who will, with the levers of presidential power, say, I don't care about the official reports. I have heard these women. I have heard these human stories. It's like one of you said, this isn't politics, this is human suffering here. And more than anything else, politics should concern itself with human suffering. The kind of human suffering that you were talking about, that you both expressed so eloquently and in a way that's so painful to hear, is the natural consequence of a system that does not care, of a system that puts short-term corporate profits, in this case for Norfolk Southern, before all else. Now, the question I had in listening to both of you is that when I was in East Palestine, I remember being told about the phone call that was recorded in which the CEO of Norfolk Southern said to his stockholders the next day or the day after, we have $1 billion insurance policy. Well, first of all, speaking about it as though, well, that suffering doesn't care because we have $1 billion insurance policy is bad enough. But the question I also have is, if you have $1 billion insurance policy, then why is Krissy sitting here wondering whether she will be homeless come March? Why isn't that $1 billion going to make sure that all the testing that needs to happen is done, to make sure that the Krissys of the world, of that area, have a new home? That's what it's going to take in a safe place. In other words, what's horrifying about this story is not just the human suffering that's being expressed, but the ineptitude, the lack of ethics, the lack of action. You say Michael Reagan said, yeah, I smelled gas. You said Sherrod Brown was there. You said you talked to 10 senators in Washington. You said that Governor DeWine finally declared a state of emergency. You say that President Biden finally gave an executive order. Given those facts, why the stories that you are continuing to tell? As a woman myself, who is living now within the belly of that beast in politics, who is expressing stories of human suffering and being erased and invisibilized just like you are, what I can tell you is that if I ever have those levers of power, your cases will be handled because the President of the United States will insist on it. And the President of the United States will not shut up. And the President of the United States will make sure that the people of America, who I do believe are decent people, hear these stories and understand. And I will call to task any agency, whether it's the EPA or any other, that fails to align itself with my intention that these people be compensated, that these people be cared for, that every action needed to be taken is taken, and that Norfolk Southern is held accountable. That's one of, to me, the worst parts of this story, that no one is being held accountable. When I was in East Palestine, I heard enough about the burns that were unnecessary. the burns that were not approved of, that were theoretically not permitted. The fact that there is no accountability, someone should be on trial.
Amen.
There should be a conversation about prosecution. There should be a conversation about indictment. There should be the possibility of conviction. This is not something that should be swept under the rug. And when you ask me what I would do as president, I promise you, it would not be swept under the rug.
And
one other thing, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The one other thing I'd like to say is even worse news. And that is that the severity of this problem is not atypical in America today. There are many communities where, although the particular consequences are not as dramatic, still experience the rolling emergency that all of you in East Palestine and related to East Palestine are experiencing now. And once again, this is not invisible to me.
I think one of my biggest frustrations, and I know I've talked to a lot of the residents. One of my biggest frustrations is we've been begging Biden for a disaster declaration. And he finally comes out with this executive order, and it does nothing for the people, not one thing. It doesn't give them housing. It doesn't give them food. It doesn't give them bottles of water. It does not do anything. And that's why I'm trying to raise money for a third time to go back out there with U-Hauls to try and help them, because it does nothing for them. Some of them are still bathing in bottled water. Like, they can't even call in FEMA and give them food and water. This is so inhumane. And Biden, this is violent. He is not doing the bare minimum, and we know why. He is bought.
Can you please tell me, I'm very interested in what you just said. What does his executive order say, Joy?
It states that they will continue, Norfolk Southern will continue the cleanup, which they already were doing anyway. It says they're going to be collecting data on a lot of things. Cool. What does that do now? It does not give them health care. There is no 1881A. These people are still suffering and they can't even see a doctor. There's nothing short term to help. There's nothing, there is no tangibles for these people whatsoever. We need that disaster declaration so we can get FEMA and we can get some actual help to the people, because that data, cool, that's good for months and years to come. But first of all, they refuse to even get independent scientists to do it. So they're all hired by the EPA, who has been caught completely making up numbers and using codes. And for those watching too, Christina and myself and my friend, we went to speak to Mark Durno in his office, who is a lead of the EPA in East Palestine. And I recorded that 91-minute conversation, which is legal in Ohio, thankfully. Surprise, Mark. And the first clips will air on News Nation Tuesday night on the East Palestine Town Hall. I can't wait for some of this stuff to get out. It is disgusting, the stuff he says behind closed doors.
Would you, Joy, please tell me what is 1881A? And when you said we couldn't even get him to do, what did you say, the Gasler declaration? I'm not sure what that word was. Would you explain those two things to me? What is 1881A?
1881A is Medicare for all.
Okay, so much like they did with Libby, Montana?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
But he did not grant that.
Can I say something on that real quick, Joy?
Yeah.
While we were in DC, one of the things that I found about the act you're talking about in Libby, Montana, is initiation of that is all based on indoor air testing. You have to show that the contamination is indoor. Right now, not only is the EPA not providing independent testers, they themselves refuse to test our homes. I had a meeting last Friday with Deborah Shore, who's the head of Region 5. Some of the interesting tidbits that came out of that was the fact that when I asked about the indoor air testing, reason number one is because they say the outdoor air is fine. On the EPA's
Sorry about that. I don't know the tech issues. I don't know if it's because it's 5 people or what, but so also, yeah, that's a really good point. And some people are being told, okay, their homes will be clean, and what that entails is having the walls washed down. There's no kind of filter cleaning or anything. Like when I went to East Palestine the last time, I was violently ill. Violently, and I lost a tooth, and it turns out 3 other residents have lost teeth. I mean, it's so bad. And it's like, what is going on? When they were given this free clinic, not only did a few people get a bills, but they didn't even have any specialists, and they were saying things like, well, I don't know what kind of drugs you've taken. And the CDC doctor said, well, we can't help you now, but we have drugs that can treat the things they're going through. So I know you are the only.
Can you tell me what the Gassler, did you say Gassler? What is that Gassler declaration that you said that President Biden?
Disaster.
Oh, disaster declaration. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we need people who are going to stand up. I mean, our people who we thought for sure would be on this are not. So we need people to stand up and say right to Biden, you need to sign a disaster declaration. You need to do it, period. And I know you are the only Dem candidate who actually supports Medicare for all. And that to me is a deal. Doesn't, and I know a lot of people who feel the same. So can you just touch on that a little, and how it would help the residents who?
Well, obviously, the fact that there is no Medicare for all, the fact that there is no universal health care is part of what makes this catastrophe so difficult to absorb. That's the problem in America today, not just that there's inflation or that there's a disaster here or things happen. The problem is that there's no wiggle room for the majority of people, that if a disaster strikes, there's no buffer. If there's no universal health care, if there's no, if one is living paycheck to paycheck anyway, if one is on the edge economically anyway, one doesn't have any power to absorb the whatever terrible thing might have just happened. And if you have a government that, number one, does not provide universal health care, that number two, does not provide a more economic system, and then when these situations happen, doesn't even care enough to help people compensate, then what you've got is a more serious problem on your hands than even these individual dramas, because you have the larger problem of a seriously, systemically corrupt system. And we are talking about corruption here. The fact that Norfolk Southern is being protected the way it's being protected, the fact that Norfolk Southern, that the billions of dollars that these railroad companies make, the fact that they were ever being protected, the fact that Obama was not able to pass the regulations that he actually wanted to pass in terms of the chemicals that were even on the train. And those chemicals are still on our railroad tracks every single day. And they continue to go through neighborhoods like East Palestine, where there are fewer and fewer segments of the population that have the power, that have the economic leverage to make enough noise in Washington. And that's why I think there's something profound about this. It's a bunch of women together. This is something you're seeing everywhere. Who are the groups of people that are coming together and insisting that the dangers that are being posed to our children's health, to our homes, this is part of a larger horror. East Palestine is a ground zero of a larger systemic problem. And that's why you need, on all levels of government. You know, I have to say one thing here. Listening to Jami talk, listening to Krissy talk, I hope the two of you will consider running for office. I do. That's what we need more of. We need the Krissys and the Jamis of the world to run for office. We are at a point now, and I'm seeing this with my campaign. We are at a point. We have to move beyond trying to influence these people. We need to replace these people in office. That's really the issue here. Enough with trying to influence people who, my God, what more could you do? You've been to Washington. You've been to every EPA meeting. You've met with the EPA director. You've met with senators. You've told Biden what you need. You've told Sherrod Brown what you need. At what point do we say some of these people need to retire? We have a new breed of politician that's going to be sitting in these seats of power. And I don't think it's an accident that we're women. And I think we need more women who are not afraid to put the child is sick. That's the bottom line. Your data is not the bottom line. Your data is not the bottom line. Data is just used as a cover. Oh, we've got the data and we're going to put it in a book somewhere and we're going to put it on a shelf somewhere. That's what your data is worth. We're talking about the teeth that people are losing, and we're talking about the nosebleeds, and we're talking about the cancer rates, and we're talking about the homes that somebody, when Krissy was talking about her parents bought the home in the 70s. And when Krissy was talking about my home is no longer my safe place, these are the stories we have to put out there, and unapologetically. And we just have to keep going. And we just have to keep going. We just have to keep going. And that's why I acknowledge you, Joy, and I acknowledge you, Krissy, and I acknowledge you, Jami. You just will not shut up. We need to be a breed of American woman who will not shut up. And in my own circumstances, just like in yours, Jami and Krissy, I know what it is to have projected onto me. Oh, she's just, she just goes on and on and on about that, to invisibilize you, to erase you. But I'm with you, and I think there are millions and millions of Americans who feel the way we do. It's very disheartening. The system seems to be locked up, but we have to just keep pushing. And the last thing we should do is think that if we continue to elect the same breed of people, that things are going to be any different.
Absolutely. Christina, what is your response to what Marianne's saying? Does it resonate with you?
Oh, one thing that I had wanted to bring up too, because I don't think a lot of people realize that, like, they still are insisting that this has only gone 1 mile. And for a lot of people in PA, I just heard from somebody on another Facebook page last night had mentioned how this is more than just East Palestine. Like, it affects Negley, that's in Ohio, just down the creek from East Palestine. The plume had gone straight into PA, and it blew all over. The winds at first for both the derailment and the vent and burn had gone first down to the south, for which I am down southeast from East Palestine. And then the direction had changed and blown up toward Darlington and even north up into Enon Valley and towards Youngstown, Ohio. And so it really just like somebody graffitiing is what I compare it to, with this spray can, where it just sprayed everywhere. And it affected, if you take the population of the areas here, it affected over 10,000 people. And we're just looking at not even the 4,700 people that lived in East Palestine, if you just go by their 1 mile radius that Norfolk Southern continues to want to use, and the EPA. There's recordings of Mark Durno saying that, yeah, those creeks are contaminated, and that goes clear down into the Ohio River eventually. And we know that the Ohio dumps into the Mississippi. So like, how many people have really been affected? And for myself and my neighbors, like, we've had rashes. Some of my neighbors are still sick that are elderly. We still have smells that get blown down here that smell like chlorine and a sweet smell. So for me, like, the night of the vent and burn, it was about an hour after it happened that we started having symptoms. And so this, like, this is more than just one small area. It's like state upon state was affected, and nobody's doing anything to help anybody really, except for what's in that 1 mile radius. There's people 1.2 miles away that can't get help, and or like even a few hundred feet. So for us, it's more like, when is help going to come for everybody else as well? And the executive order or the declaration of disaster that was from DeWine doesn't really cover anybody outside that 1 mile area. And our representatives that I've talked to, one has said, well, just because you saw a black plume of smoke go over your house doesn't mean you've been affected. And then another one says, well, we don't even know how this is going to affect us in a year to 20 years. So what can we do? We need to know what we can do. My representative is just now trying to see if he can get us any help where I live, but he's hitting brick walls too.
I think part of that is we haven't had anybody come out and fiercely fight. We have people who may make a tweet or may make a little video, but we need people who will come out there and demand that these people are helped, that demand that they have humanity back, and that they demand that they're human beings, and this is violent and it is disgusting and inhumane. I mean, Marianne, one of the reasons I asked you to come today, first of all, you're the only candidate who bothered to show up. And yes, I'll tell you right now, because I know it'll be in the comments, I have asked Cornell, who I know, time and time and time and time again, and he has ignored me. So before people say, well, Cornell will come, we'll tell him to, because he won't. Marianne has been the only person who has been responsive, showed up, talked about it, and actually been interested in what is going on. So I'm going to say that right now. But also, you know, one of the reasons I asked you to come on is because your entire platform is East Palestine. It's environment, it's in healthcare, it's corporate greed. This is literally everything on your platform. So can you kind of speak to that? Like, why do you have those things on your platform? Why are they important to you? And I know that's kind of general, but are there any other situations which have inspired you to put those things on?
First of all, I do think Bobby Kennedy showed up there. I don't know what kind, because I remember him talking to the mayor. I saw some video early in his candidacy. I don't know if he has stayed on.
He met with the mayor. He did not meet with the people.
That's very, yeah, that does not actually surprise me, but yeah.
Right.
Okay. There is in sociology an expression, and the expression is that there are screaming emergencies and there are silent emergencies. And East Palestine represents both. It was a screaming emergency in the sense of all of the drama, but it represents the deeper silent emergency which, as I've already mentioned, is simply the fact that the majority of Americans not only are the more susceptible and vulnerable to situations such as this, but also the least able to absorb them. That is my campaign, because that is true of the majority of Americans, even if this particular screaming emergency had not occurred. Poverty is an emergency. Hunger is an emergency. Lack of access to health care, lack of access to education, lack of access to economic opportunity is an emergency. So the reason my campaign includes addressing something like East Palestine is because my campaign is based on a cry of the heart about the fact that this level of trauma is almost baked into the cake in America today. Even if there is not a specific explosion, there are little internal explosions that people go through every single day, worrying. You know, when Krissy was talking about, this house is only, the rent is paid till March. And this is what Krissy said a few minutes ago, that her house the rent is paid until March, and after that, she doesn't know if she'll be homeless. There were over 3 million evictions last year. That's as great as during the housing crisis. There are millions of people in America who, as we speak, are worried to death that they might miss one rent check that would put them over the edge and send them into living in their cars. And we should remember how many people in America live in their cars, are homeless, but who also work full time. So what the system that has been described here from the EPA on down would like us to do now is just forget about East Palestine. And that's why what you're doing is so important, Joy, and what all of the women on this program are doing. We will not forget. Attention must be paid. But the system is all about invisibilization. Whether it's the poor, whether it's the homeless, whether it's the hungry, whether it's those who have no wiggle room, who are homeless, let's just pretend that's not happening. And the entire political conversation is really 20% of Americans having a conversation among themselves and saying to people who are not in that 20%, oh, you should vote for us because we're better for you. And more people are realizing actually it doesn't matter which one of you we vote for, it's not better for us. When you were talking before, Joy, my question was that you mentioned Senator Sherrod Brown. Senator, and you said that there's no one political voice out there screaming about these things. Well, even putting aside that I am, and then the response to that is to invisibilize. Sherrod Brown is considered a pretty progressive senator. What is your theory for why Sherrod Brown is not making more noise about this? What are your thoughts about that? Why isn't Sherrod Brown making more noise?
Well, I certainly get a lot of texts from him to raise money for his next campaign. I think part of the reason, honestly, is because the more he brings it up, the more it shows he should be held accountable, because this is something that happened 8 months ago. And I mean, and as the lady said, you know, they have met with him personally. What is he doing? This is the thing. If you are elected president on day one, can you guarantee disaster declaration is done?
I can. Absolutely.
FEMA brought in.
Absolutely. That is my oath. Day one, disaster declaration for East Palestine, Ohio. Not only East Palestine, Ohio, but the surrounding, what I'm assuming based on this call would be a 7-mile radius. I mean, that's pretty much, I would talk to the people who are there, who are to me the primary experts.
Right.
The fact that it should be the 1881A, that it should be, I stand for Medicare for all for every American anyway, but certainly for those living in these disaster areas. This is, there's something rotten at the core here. with the lack of not only of governmental response, but also the lack of accountability for Norfolk Southern. And this is why, Joy, I talk about this matrix of corporate entities in this country, whether it's insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, big ag, big food, big oil, big chemical companies, gun manufacturers, big banks, or defense contractors. It is a matrix of corporate tyranny. There's something really wrong here. And the president does not have a magic wand, but you absolutely better believe it. I would be in there, and if nothing else, if I couldn't even get anywhere with the system because of the layers of protection, including congressional at times, I would use the bully pulpit to make it very clear to the American people what's going on in their name.
Do you, and I know you're on tour, like on tour for the campaign. Do you,
You're frozen.
Pittsburgh area, Darlington area, somewhere like that, and being able to meet with the people in person again?
I'm sorry, because you were frozen, I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
Oh, I don't want you to go in East Palestine itself because I don't want you to get sick, but do you anticipate going to Darlington or Pittsburgh even, or somewhere like that?
I am planning to go to Erica, who is the woman, I think Jami knows Erica, maybe Krissy and Christina do too. Erica was the first woman to reach out to me, and she was talking to me recently actually about going to Pittsburgh, and I absolutely want to. But I will tell you this, at a certain point, going to hear from people in Darlington is not as important as being able to speak to the people throughout the United States about what is going on in Darlington. So there's the good news and the bad news. Because if you just show up in Darlington, there's a little bit of a performative aspect to that. Oh, showed up, photo op, video. We got to go deeper than that. And going deeper than that, given the fact that I have been to East Palestine, that I am going to Pittsburgh, that I am in conversations like this. The issue is being able to arouse a politics of conscience. Enough people in this country, and I do believe there are enough people in this country, who would say, hell yeah, those people should be helped. People on the left and the right of the American political spectrum. I believe that. I believe that the average American would be, and when they hear these stories, is horrified, wondering, what are my tax dollars for, if not to show up to help people in such situations as this? The problem is that I get, on a political level, Joy, exactly what these women are getting. Block her. Don't listen. Give her the runaround. And that's why this will not change unless enough of us show up with each other. And that's why I appreciate you. You know, sometimes I'll be up late at night and I'll see something that you email. And I think your heart, not your emails, your tweets, your heart, that you care about Jami, and you care about Krissy, and you care about Christina, and we care about Erica, and we care about these children. I remember there was one woman who, at that meeting, and Jami, I think you were there, at that meeting in East Palestine, I remember it was a young woman, and she had a husband, and was farmland, and she had children, and I just remember the way she looked at me, and we don't know if we'll ever be able to go back. Where are these people supposed to go? Where are people supposed to go? So the most important thing, like I said, is to be able to get our voices out there so that the American people are willing to express at the ballot box what at this point is a revolutionary impulse that we are unwilling to accept anymore, the status quo, because the status quo is so failing people, not failing the rich, not failing the powerful, but failing the majority of Americans. And the people who are at the effect of what happened in East Palestine just happen to have been unfortunate enough to be at the effect of one ground zero but the problem is so much bigger than East Palestine. And I'm running for president in order to name that and claim whatever power is available in the executive branch to try to turn these things around.
Jami, do you have anything you'd like to leave with Marianne? Anything you request that she would do, or any lasting thoughts you'd like to give her? You're muted.
She might be muted, but I hope she heard me when I said, I hope she'll run for office.
Oh,
hope she runs for Congress.
Yeah, she better.
She should run for, Jami, if you run for Congress, honey, I'll be there to endorse you and support you. Joy and I will be there. Joy, you and I will go there, and we'll do an event for her, right? That would be fun. Jami, get at it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Christina, do you have any thoughts you want to leave with Marianne? Like anything you would want her to push for or talk about?
Well, one thing that like I've heard her say a few times is like how this isn't just like a problem here with people suffering across the country, and I see that a lot too. There are people all over, and it seems like our government feels like the only people that matter are the people who have money, or the people who can fund their campaigns, or the people who can afford to send money overseas. It seems like a lot of things that could be helped in this country are ignored for the sake of corporations and for the sake of sending money overseas is a big problem, right? Especially right now. We know that there are problems in the world, and yes, those people need help as well. But I feel like, personally, I feel like we need to help the people that are here. There is a big homeless problem in this country. There are people who are hungry, children that are hungry all the time, just as there are in every other country. But we're not helping people here across the whole country. There's problems with people having clean water, just as there are people who don't have clean water in Africa. There's problems in India with people not having clean water, but we have the same problems here. And why are we not taking care of our own problems and really falling apart? It feels like this country is falling apart. And the people who came before us had fought so hard to have the freedoms and the rights that we have had, but are losing because of caring more about what corporations do and more about what other countries are doing that don't affect us right now.
May I say
So
something to that?
I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
Marianne, do you have a
Yeah,
response?
I'm sorry. I
Go
didn't
ahead,
know.
Marianne.
Yes, I do have something to say. Christina, everything that you just said about corporations is very, very true. And I couldn't agree with you more. And our public policy has more to do with making it easier for people who already have access to capital get even more. And those policies make it more and more difficult for other people to even get by. I agree with that. And my campaign is definitely aligned with that belief. I would like to submit to you, however, that the fact that money is sent overseas is not the problem. We have plenty of money to address the issues that you are talking about. That it has nothing to do with, well, we're sending it overseas. It has to do with the corporate issues you were talking about, the deregulations of these huge corporations such as Norfolk Southern. It has to do with the taxes. It has to do with the corporate donations, the tax rates of corporate. It definitely has to do with that. I would like to, however, submit to you, because you mentioned it so many times, when you talk about our ancestors who fought for us to be free, one of the things they did was fight World War II. You actually cannot separate taking a stand overseas against tyrants from fighting for our freedom. So I just want to say that, because there's a lot of I belief right now that we're not addressing these things here because we're sending money overseas. The amount of money that the United States sends in humanitarian aid is very small compared to other advanced democracies. And I think this business about Ukraine, because that's really the implication. Ukraine is, even the money we've spent, is 1/10 of our yearly defense budget. The fact that the defense budget is so big definitely speaks to what you're talking about. But I just want to submit my belief, because I wouldn't be true to my own heart if I didn't say that. The suffering of other people and the attacks on other people that are sovereign nations. This is not being done instead of helping people here. I just want to say that, because there is this meme out there that would indicate otherwise. I just wanted to say that. And I just wanted to say that. I believe there's a,
Yeah, and I don't want to come off as well as I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't help those countries, but we should also take into account that we need to also help our country.
I couldn't agree with that more. I totally agree with that. Believe me, I agree with that.
Yeah, we just also need to not forget about people here. And
well, the money that you're talking about is going to the corporations here, definitely.
Yeah.
Marianne, what would you like to leave everyone in East Palestine and surrounding areas, as well as our viewers? What would you like to leave them with?
Well, I'm sure that they feel heartened by your being there, the things you have done, the fact that you will not shut up about it. And I just, Martin Luther King said, your life begins to end on the day you stop talking about things that matter. Our political system resists conversations about things that matter most. And that's what you're doing here. So I want to acknowledge you, Joy, for even having this. And I just hope that Jami and Krissy and Christina and others who are watching this in that area are somewhat heartened by the fact that, number one, this program, this podcast is happening. Number two, knowing how many people are watching it. And I hope that some feel a hope knowing that there is one presidential candidate who is on it, has been on it, has written about it. My kudos to Erica, who first spoke to me about it. And my absolute promise that yes, day one, declaration of disaster in East Palestine. We need a mother in the White House. We need somebody who's going to say children first, health first, human needs first, not corporate profits first. And I hope that those who believe me and who have faith in my words and know that I'm not kidding, because why would I, will do what you can to support me and to support the campaign. And go to Marianne2024.com. No one thing is going to fix it. No one podcast is going to fix it. No one president is going to fix it. But the voices together, all of us together, keep pushing, is going to turn things around. I believe this with all my heart. But it's not easy, as we know. We just need to keep leaning against that wall of resistance. Just lean against it, lean against it, lean against it. Don't shut up. Refuse to shut up. Refuse to be invisible. And refuse to allow your sisters to be invisible. Refuse to allow your sisters to be erased. I know that a lot of people listening to this today have really heard what you have said, Joy, what Christina and Krissy and Jami have said. And every person can look in their own heart and ask how they can help. And if we have enough movement in that direction, not just what I can get in life, but what can I give to make things better for everyone, we're going to have a political miracle in this country. Other generations have created them, and we can create one too.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to Marianne, of course, but also Christina, Krissy, Jami. And I do want to remind everyone that these are 3 of the people I was able to bring mutual aid to because of your donations. I'm going to put the link in the comments. Buy me a coffee, Savage Joy Marie Mann. Anything you give helps me get back there and bring more mutual aid, which is, you know, what I've been focusing on for the past few months. And they are still very in need of, I think the number one thing I bought was baby diapers. I mean, they need help. So thank you so much to those watching. And again, thank you so much for our guests. Marianne, you know, you have an open invitation whenever you'd like to come, same as residents. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the tech issues. I'm not sure why, but I'll see what I can.
Thank you, Joy.
There we go.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
That was so epic. Sorry about the tech issue. That was epic. I mean, come on. It was cringe, but it was epic. Yeah, I mean, I've had Marianne on a bunch of times. It was great to do an East Palestine panel. I mean, I've been having on the residents so often for months. But it was important to me to also have like I don't really do the candidate thing anymore, but you know, she's someone that I talk to now and then, and you know, I was like, let's see it from this perspective. And as well, like I said, she's the only candidate who's even given me the time of day. And I'm sorry, but that means something, because my ego is not bruised from them not getting back to me. I really don't care, but it bothers me when these are people who are hurting so badly, and they're people who I love, and they're being disregarded. So if anyone wants to come on and you know, have a talk with these people, I am so freaking down. So yeah, Cornell, where you at, dude? I'm done asking. I don't beg. Like, anyway, so I'm gonna go bad and then go good. Okay, so the end about Ukraine, I appreciate what Christina was saying. I think Christina was spot on. First of all, sorry for the tech issues. It was not freaking easy because a lot of what was said was like cut out. But you know, Christina, I think, really conveyed was what so many of us are talking about when we say you are giving so much money to blowing people up. And we have unhoused people everywhere. We have no health care. We have all these things wrong. It's about the focus. It's not just the money. It is the focus. It is the fact that if you go to Twitter and type in healthcare, see how many results come up. Go to Twitter and type in Ukraine, see how many results come up. This is what is happening. This is what has been happening. That is the problem. It is the priority and the focus. So, I mean, if my stream didn't freaking fail, I watched
Technology,
it back
man.
and I'm like, no, I could have said that, but like I was like, and I was like, no. So, and I mean, real talk, and I hope she's not on here because I don't want to embarrass her, but Christina's my girl. And afterwards, she was like, I hope I didn't come off a certain kind of way. And I was like, no, you didn't.
She was polite.
She was polite. She was thoughtful. She was, I mean,
It was great.
and you could tell she was kind of trying not to be like offensive to anyone. Like what she said made perfect sense to me. She did not bring up Ukraine, and I was very disappointed with Marianne's answer.
Yep.
I was. I mean, end of the day, one is to help people, one is to kill people. I mean,
we care about killing people.
What's that?
We care more about killing people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's priority. But it's like, I mean, also the thing is like, it's just so frustrating because at the end of the day, it's not even so much about the money, because I really don't think, I mean, this is like, who knows, because it's whataboutism, but like, I think that if this country had healthcare, had jobs, had an end to unhoused people, had, that sounded really bad, ended homelessness. That's what I meant to say.
Eliminate the homeless people.
Eliminate just eugenics of the poor. No.
It's already happening. That's what this is.
That's awful. But if we got rid of those problems, it would still be an issue giving all that money to Ukraine and what have you, not because it's Ukraine, but because it's war. That's the thing. It's war. I mean, so yes, that disappointed me greatly. And I don't know, Matt, what did you think I mean, did you agree with what Christina said?
Yeah, totally. She's echoing a sentiment that we're hearing all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I even made a sign about it.
Yeah.
We have all this money for guns in Ukraine, but no money for clean water for Americans. It's insane.
Absolutely. And we also have to put this into the perspective of someone who is literally watching her community get diagnosed with cancer. Okay. Someone who is relying on mutual aid, someone who is watching her friends and family get sick. Like, and we're telling them, like, sorry, these bombs are more important than you, because maybe we're not saying that. Maybe we're not literally saying we are choosing this over you. But when one has the focus, one has the money, one has the resources.
Yeah,
they are choosing it over them.
One of them is happening.
Literally.
Ukraine war is happening.
Yeah.
Help for
and I read an article that was like a breakdown of where the money we're sending is going to, and part of it is going to healthcare. So I think Christina had a very valid concern, and I was just kind of disappointed that that the interview kind of took that turn. On the positive note, though, I do think we had some great discussion. I think that we, talked about some very important things. And I really like, of course, I love having my friends on to be able to share their experiences. What was your thought, Matt, overall?
I think it's good for your channel having Marianne on. I don't think she said much of anything of substance, but I don't want to be a hater too much right now.
We're hard when it comes to politicians. Like, it's
Yeah.
hard. Like, I knew her as a friend before I knew her as a politician. So it's
So
a
has she
very
changed a lot?
weird.
Is she a different person now?
It's weird because, like, I didn't like it was different. You know what I mean? Like, it was like we weren't like joking around and like being silly. Like, it was like it was and she was exhausted. You could tell, like, even her voice was hoarse and everything.
Yeah.
So it was definitely different. But I mean, she's on the trail, she's campaigning. I appreciate what she's doing regardless. I mean, what's that say?
From Jenna, it says, "Nah, it wasn't cool for Miss Williamson to lecture Christina. That thing at the end was
For
kind of
not
like a
cool for a
lecture
what?
for Miss Williamson to lecture Christina about,
Yeah.
if we didn't have war, that doesn't mean the government would help us, right? That's what she's trying to
No,
say.
did it
And
help? Did they help us last year? I mean,
no,
yeah, I mean, that's a valid point. It's yeah. I mean, now I'll say the positive things. I appreciate Marianne being the first one to step up and primary Biden. That took balls. That took balls to be like, yep, you know what? I'm the first and only. Let's go. I appreciate the fact that she's the only Dem running who actually supports Medicare for all, help for the climate. She free Assange, and things that are very important to us. Electoral politics just kind of hurts my heart. I don't know.
yeah, me too.
It
Me
just
too.
like Bernie kind of broke me into 5 billion pieces, and I'm just kind of like, but I still appreciate when people are pushing things that I support and that I want. Because at this point, for me, it's not even about voting, it's who is actually standing up for what I want to fight for. And she said some things that are on point, whether you support her or not. It is time to replace these people, not time to try and change these people. They can't change. They won't change. They've been there for decades. They don't change. You can't change someone in the exact same system. So we have to replace them. Now, the downside to that is we tried to replace some of them with people like AOC. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like there is no like solution. It's hard. It really is. It's hard. But I mean, she's, I love her very much. She's done a lot for me personally. Been a good friend and everything. So, but being objective, as a journalist and a voter, that's kind of my job to just keep it real. But I do think that it was a very good program, and I think we had a lot of good dialogue. I definitely want to make a few clips, of course. Krissy, I just like, I don't know if I ever cry so hard in my freaking life as the first time I met her. I was just like, literally, all I did was walk up to her and looked at her, and I was like, ah! Like, it was, well, Jenna did too, in fairness. Like, she's just, Krissy. But yes, thank you to all my East Palestine people. Everybody smash that like. Everybody smash that subscribe. Everybody share this. And I'm going to give you guys some assignments. Number 1, post about East Palestine. That's number 1. Number 2, post about East Palestine. And number 3, post about East Palestine. And I mean, we need more help. People aren't talking about it. And if you watch other YouTubers, tell them in the comments, be like, yo,
Yeah.
you need to talk
Yeah.
about East Palestine.
We just had
Step your
that
fucking shit up.
Biden just signed a thing. It's big, right? It's a big deal. I've heard no other channels say anything about it.
No,
It's crazy.
it's not sexy. It's not.
It's kind of
I
boring
mean,
if you don't care, right? If you feel like the people in East Palestine are far off, right? They're not where I am.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't care.
It's gross. It's absolutely gross. And you know what? We can say we were on the right side of history, because when this happens again, when we're going to be like, where were you guys?
Right.
Where were you guys? We've been screaming about this for fucking 8 months. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Tomorrow night, I will be in the air because tomorrow morning I'm leaving for Santa Fe. It is my 10-year wedding anniversary. Yay! So myself and my husband are going to Santa Fe to celebrate, also to sprinkle my friend's ashes there. So it's kind of ironic, but she would love it and think it's hilarious. It was her favorite place. So yes, we'll be gone. I will not be back to do next Monday's show. So you guys can go through withdrawal, unfortunately. I'll probably come back and do a show Tuesday. But yes, so now something super exciting. I will be in the air tomorrow night, but while I am, News Nation, I know you guys have heard me talk about like me, Christina, who you just saw, and Jenna in the comments. You saw, if you've tuned in before, I've talked about how we went into one of the lead EPA people in East Palestine, Mark Durno's office. Didn't have an appointment or anything. I just kind of walked in and was like, hey, he said he'd meet with me, but then he ghosted me. So anyway, I've been like shopping around, the clips and everything, and just seeing like essentially who's the biggest audience I could get it to, because some of the stuff on it is revealing, and I'm really hoping that we can use this to get a disaster declaration or something. But I do have some lawyers who are interested in it, so yay. But in any case, tomorrow night, watch News Nation. I was so excited. I've been chatting with the producer. Chris Cuomo, but he's doing a panel on East Palestine tomorrow night, 8 p.m. And the very first recording clip from that 91-minute audio is going to be premiering on the town hall tomorrow night on News Nation. I know if you're Comcast, for PA people, it's channel 187. Not sure, but I know they have a YouTube as well. So I'm going to be releasing more and more clips. But this will be the premiere because I wanted it on like a 1 million follower platform, because this shit needs to get out there. It's fucking bad. So tune in. I will see you guys next week. Wish me luck. Hopefully going to have some fun in Nuevo Mexico. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you can chip in, I would really appreciate it. All that money goes to either my streaming fees or hopefully getting back to East Palestine again. But thank you so much. Smash that like and smash that subscribe. And also thank you, Matt, for helping on the back end again. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Have a good night,
Take
guys.
care, everyone.